Okay, I wanted to go ahead and roll out part two now. I didn't want to wait any later, and I wanted to, I not trying to overwhelm anybody, but I mean, you know, here's the thing: tomorrow is not a guarantee, and you know, this channel could go down. I mean, any number of things can happen, and so it's very important to me to at least go ahead and put part two out there so that everything is out there on the channels. I've got this going to, and actually let me send this link out to some of my people. Let's see. So this is actually going on Facebook as well as both YouTube channels. I've got this going to Lafayette County Audit. I've got this going to We the People News. I've also got this going to Facebook, to my personal profile, Matthew Reardon. And I've also got this going to my We the People News Facebook page. So it's streaming right now to 4 separate sources. So like I said, I'm going to take a second and I want to make sure that this gets put where it needs to be. For those that are tuning in that didn't catch part one, okay, part one you'll find right now on the Lafayette County Audit YouTube channel. I plan on, whenever it's fully uploaded, putting it on We the People News as well, and I'll also upload that to Facebook. In typical form and fashion, I like to start my streams out with some music. I love music. I think we saw in the last one, and we see just about in everything, that the government is the one thing that they know how to do, and they know how to do well, is gaslight. So I have right here the Gaslight Anthem. I'm going to go ahead and play that while I'm sharing the stream out.
Mark Arrington. Your name
Don
is
Matthews.
Don Matthews?
Yeah.
They said it didn't happen, even when the footage showed it. They said you misunderstood, even when you quoted them word for word, for word. They said you were unstable, even when the system was falling apart. This isn't confusion, it's strategy. Gaslighting, the government's favorite tool. But every time they lie, another camera rolls. Every time they deny, another file uploads. Truth is the new rebellion, and we're filming it in real time. This is the gaslight anthem. Is the gaslight anthem. They said it didn't happen, even when the footage showed it. They said you misunderstood, even when you quoted them word for word, word for word, for word. They said you were unstable, even when the system was falling apart. This isn't confusion, it's strategy. Gaslighting, the government's favorite tool. But every time they lie, another camera rolls. Every time they deny, another file uploads. Truth is the new rebellion, and we're filming it in real time. This is the gaslight anthem. Is the gaslight anthem. Is the gaslight anthem. Is the gaslight anthem. Every time they lie, another camera rolls. Every time they deny, another file uploads. Truth is the new rebellion, and we're filming it in real time. This is the gaslight anthem. It's the gaslight anthem. This is the gaslight anthem. It's the gaslight anthem.
Mark Arrington. Your name
Don
is
Matthews.
Don Matthews?
Yeah.
Should be able to hear me now. All right. So yeah, that's the gaslight anthem. Um, you know, government's going to keep on gaslighting and using that as their tool. I'm just going to keep on trolling and just pointing it out every chance that I get. Look, this is part one was absolutely like it lays everything out perfectly chronologically. All right. Part two right here is, I mean, it's a whole separate type of crazy. Part one builds the foundation for this major scandal out of North Mississippi. This is it was it's a multi-state conspiracy that's proven. I mean, they did it with Galveston, and it's proven they did it with Layton. And so this gets into this is the part where I take action. All right. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get these clips playing because um, actually this one, just the way that it's built, everything's already put together, is actually a little bit longer than the first one. I mean, we got people, I don't know what time zone everybody is on. I know I'm on Mountain Time and it's just after 9 o'clock over here, but I'm going to go ahead and start this so that anybody that, you know, wants to see it and doesn't want to stay up late, you know, you can see as much as possible. So, um, here it is.
Mark Arrington. Your name
Don
is
Matthews.
Don Matthews?
Yeah.
Mark Arrington. Your name
Don
is
Matthews.
Don Matthews?
Yeah.
Message from my landlord to retrieve it. Background check.
It's the gaslight anthem. This is the gaslight anthem. It's the gaslight anthem.
I'm over at the same place that I was before, probably a month ago. Same place that I realized, everybody realized, the big shocker that you can't report a federal crime, a major federal crime at that, to these people unless they actually run a complete and full background check. First of all, they tried to give me the damn runaround on bringing this affidavit over here, trying to claim that because I got here 5 minutes or whatever after 4 o'clock that nobody would meet with me. I just had an argument with an agent over at the office that was a complete smartass about the requirement for a background check. Doesn't make a bit of sense to me. He wanted to tell me I don't know the Fourth Amendment. Said they've had this policy for a long time as far as running a background check to speak to an agent. said the Fourth Amendment's been around a lot longer than whatever your policy is. Y'all forget about that? You forget about the document called the Constitution? Clearly, these jackasses have way too much money in their budget. If they can afford to run a background check on somebody just to speak to an agent. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So, I'm going to go over what I wanted to drop off with the FBI. And I sure hope somebody is scoping this YouTube out, like I'm sure they are. Because this just got filed in federal court today anyways. But what I really wanted to see is if the FBI was going to take their job seriously and take a major complaint. All I wanted to do was to see somebody in person. All they had to do was come to the damn gate and talk to me. But this is the nonsense. These people are paid for with taxpayer dollars, and this is exactly how they treat the people that pay their salaries. All right. In my hand right here, it's backwards on this, I've got a sworn declaration. I'm going to read this sworn declaration live on this video since I couldn't actually turn it in to the FBI. Want to give me the runaround. I guess I have another complaint to file with the Office of the Inspector General. So this will make 3 now. I'm just going to keep filing paperwork until something changes, because this is ridiculous. I, Matthew Oliver Reardon, declare under penalty of perjury, under the laws of the United States of America, that the following is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and belief. 1, I am over the age of 18 and competent to make this declaration. I am the individual referenced in communications sent by Captain Hilden Sessoms of the Oxford, Mississippi Police Department on February the 5th, 2025. Number 2, I moved into a residence in Layton, Utah, late in the day on February 1st, 2025. The residence is located at, I'm going to redact that for this video. Number 3, at the time I moved in, I had not submitted or disclosed that residential address to any person, agency, platform, or institution, public or private. Number 4, I had not yet updated or filed my new address with the Department of Motor Vehicles, the United States Postal Service, voter registration, tax filings, or any other governmental record-keeping agency. Number 5, I had not mentioned or published the address on any public platform, social media account, video, form, or document, nor had I provided it to any individual outside of the leasing process. Number 6, in fact, I did not have the address memorized and routinely had to refer back to a text message from my landlord to retrieve it. This further affirms that I could not have casually or inadvertently disclosed the address myself. Number 7, at no point prior to February 5th, 2025, did I provide my new Layton address to any law enforcement agency, including but not limited to the Layton.
Hey sir, how's it going?
What's going on?
Hey, I'm gonna have to ask for you to leave though, otherwise you'll get charged with trespassing.
I'm going to get charged with trespassing, being on public
You're
public
not on
property.
public property. This is private property.
The FBI is private property. No, this is actually a parking lot right here.
No, so yeah, but we own this. Yeah, but we own this. Yeah, but we own this. You can go in the grass. You can go on the other side of the street, but you need to leave this area.
So this, you're actually going to tell me this. I'm a journalist, and I'm
Okay.
here. I tried to turn in.
Where are your credentials at?
I don't need fucking credentials. Who are you to ask me for fucking credentials?
You have a
Where's
body
your,
now.
okay, I don't give a fuck.
Alright.
Where's your supervisor at?
You don't need to talk to my supervisor. Does filming make you feel cool?
Yeah. Does being a fucking dumbass, does refusing to talk to the public, does that make you feel special?
I'm talking to you. I'm not refusing to talk to you.
Well, I'm not going to play your fucking games. I'm going to leave the property,
Thank you so much.
and I'm actually going to go right out here to the curb, and then I'd like to see you do something, motherfucker.
All right.
Piece of shit.
You're really big behind the camera. All right,
Yeah.
you can leave now.
Fucking tool. Can y'all believe that? Did you hear what he said? Oh, he's looking at my tag. Yeah, get the fuck out of the way.
Just getting your license.
Yeah, okay. See that? Declaration of Matthew Oliver Reardon, pursuant to 28 U.S. Code 1746. I, Matthew Oliver Reardon, declare under penalty of perjury, under the laws of the United States of America, that the following is true and correct. Number 1, I am a journalist and constitutional rights advocate residing in Layton, Utah. I am competent to make this declaration and do so of my own personal knowledge. Number 2, on March 31st, 2025, I visited the FBI Salt Lake City office in an attempt to deliver an affidavit alleging serious misconduct and potential federal crimes by Captain Hilden Sessoms of the Oxford, Mississippi Police Department. Number 3, Captain Sessoms has previously admitted to being a graduate of the FBI National Academy, and I believe his ties to the FBI may explain the federal government's ongoing unwillingness to investigate his conduct or accept reports implicating him in civil rights violations and unlawful surveillance. Number 4, I have previously experienced refusal, stonewalling, and systemic inaction from the FBI in response to reported documented abuses involving Mississippi state and local officials. I believe this demonstrates a long-standing pattern of disregard or prejudice by the Bureau against me. Number 5, upon arrival at the Salt Lake City FBI office on March 31st, 2025, I was not allowed past the outer visitor gate. FBI agents refused to even approach to retrieve my affidavit or engage in discussion. They instead demanded my driver's license and personal identification for the purpose of running a full background check before they would even accept a piece of paper from me. Number 6, I was there for lawful purposes, attempting to submit documented evidence and a sworn statement alleging criminal activity by a law enforcement official. Number 7, I explicitly refused to submit to a background check, citing my Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure. I told them that no victim of a crime should be required to give up their constitutional rights to report criminal conduct. Number 8, the FBI agent became hostile and refused to engage unless I complied with this arbitrary and unconstitutional demand. This procedure, which he claimed was policy, served to chill my First Amendment rights, as I was ultimately prevented from submitting a criminal complaint or my affidavit due to their refusal to accept it without unlawfully searching me first. Number 9, I began reporting on the event live, standing in the publicly accessible visitor parking lot outside the gate of the FBI field office. I was peacefully reading from my declaration on camera when 2 FBI agents approached without warning or conversation and ordered me to leave immediately under threat of arrest for trespassing. Number 10, when I asserted my right to be present in the public visitor area as a journalist and civilian, I pointed out that taxpayer-funded federal property is not private. However, they insisted that the parking lot was FBI-owned private property and that I was no longer welcome. Their only response was, "If you don't leave, you'll be charged." Number 11. In addition, an agent walked around my car to the rear and recorded my license plate number, further escalating the surveillance, intimidation, and harassment against me. 12. I believe that this act was retaliatory and that the FBI's actions, past and present, reflect a deliberate effort to suppress my speech, evade accountability, and shield Sessoms from investigation due to institutional ties and complicity. 13. I believe this encounter, as well as prior conduct, establishes a violation of my First Amendment right to petition the government and report as a journalist, of my Fourth Amendment right against suspicionless search, a retaliatory pattern against a known journalist and constitutional rights advocate, probable unlawful sharing and constitutional rights advocate, probable unlawful sharing of surveillance or intelligence with Sessoms by the FBI or its agents, executed this first day of April 2025 at 7 o'clock a.m. Matthew Oliver Reardon. Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Reardon. I'm a journalist, an author, and a constitutional rights advocate. And today, I'm standing before you as a whistleblower whose urgent complaint has been ignored by the very agency that claims to protect people like me. On Wednesday of last week, April the 9th, I submitted a brand new complaint to the Department of Justice, Office of the Inspector General. This wasn't just a follow-up. It was a comprehensive, updated filing that incorporated new evidence and expanded on a previous complaint I submitted earlier this year, which also went unanswered. That's right. This wasn't my first time knocking on their door. Earlier in 2025, I used their official web submission form to report serious misconduct involving 2 Lafayette County Sheriff's deputies. I never heard back. No response. No case number. No acknowledgement. So last week, I gave them another chance. I submitted a new, detailed complaint by email with 2 sworn declarations, a full timeline of events, and exhibits clearly showing how my civil rights were violated, how federal level data appears to have been weaponized against me and handed off to local agencies. I requested a case number. I asked for confirmation. I asked for whistleblower protection. Nothing. The next day, April 10th, I followed up again, repeating my request and explaining the urgency. Still no response. Today I called them. I went through the phone prompts. I reached the line for a live representative. It rang, and then it went to voicemail. I left a detailed message explaining exactly who I was, what I submitted, and why I needed a call today. That call never came. Let me be perfectly clear. This silence is not an accident. This is a deliberate refusal to acknowledge a journalist reporting illegal government conduct. That makes the Inspector General's office complicit in the very kind of misconduct they are supposed to investigate. This isn't about ego or recognition. It's about accountability. When a citizen, armed with evidence, sworn declarations, and a clear paper trail, brings allegations of government overreach to the DOJ's internal watchdog, and they respond with silence, that's not oversight. That's obstruction. So today, I'm calling for the following: a formal acknowledgement and case number from the Department of Justice Office of the Inspector General, a full investigation into not only the content of my complaint, but their failure to respond. And for members of Congress, civil rights groups, and independent watchdogs like Judicial Watch, the ACLU, and POGO to step up and demand transparency. Because if this can happen to me, an outspoken journalist, Marine Corps veteran, and constitutional rights advocate, it can happen to anyone. I will not be intimidated into silence. I will not be erased by bureaucratic indifference. And I will not stop until this issue gets the full exposure and justice it demands. Thank you. Matthew Reardon, reporting live outside the U.S. District Court for the District of Utah. WTP, We the People News.
How are you doing? All right, how you doing? What are you doing? Just hanging out? Huh? Filming? Yeah, I'm reporting on a story. Sorry, say that again. Said I'm reporting on a story. Okay, got it. That's fine. I'm gonna do that. Find out what's going on federal property. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's open to the public, so are you just a reporter, or like it's specific to you? I mean, honestly, I really don't want to answer any questions. I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm up here on public property. Like I said, I have documented anything on federal property. So. Yeah. Well, I mean, you heard me. I mean, I'm reporting on a story. Yeah. Okay. So.
You have reached the Department of Justice, Office of the Inspector General.
Apparently their phone doesn't want to pick up the 3 that I hit. Let's call it back again.
Hello, you have reached the... The person you are trying to reach is currently unavailable. Please leave a message after the tone. When you have finished, please hang up or press the pound key for more options.
Hi, my name is Matthew Reardon. I am calling in regards to some major concerns that I have. I just recently turned in another OIG complaint, and I sent that in on Wednesday, the 9th. It was sent to I sent it to 2 email addresses associated up there. I sent it to oighotline@usdoj.gov. I also CC'd that to inspector.general@usdoj.gov. It's got the full complaint right there. It's 7 pages long, and it's got 2 sworn declarations, exhibits, supporting documentation, a timeline of events implicating federal involvement and deprivation of rights. Now, this is the second complaint that I've submitted to y'all. I actually used the online submission. It was either the last couple of days of February or the first couple of days of March. Never received any type of case number on that, and I never did hear anything in regards to that. There are very serious claims in this complaint. Please give me a call at 662-701-2458. That's 662-701-2458. I need to hear from somebody today. I need to know that this complaint is assigned a number. I need to know that something is being done about it. I would prefer to not have to send something on certified mail, but if I have to, if I don't hear from somebody, fairly soon, then I'll go ahead and send something out certified mail. But it would seem that I'm having to pull teeth on getting some type of oversight and accountability into this issue. These are major civil rights violations. I'm a journalist, I'm an author, and the problem, this particular problem started with an illegal interstate surveillance campaign by a police officer in another state. It was all part of harassment and doxing, and the issue was compounded with the Federal Bureau of Investigations over in Salt Lake City on the 31st of March. So please get in touch with me and let me know in regards to me sending the complaint to those email addresses. I need to know what's going on with it. And honestly, I'm, as a journalist, I'm now kind of, my curiosity is now piqued on everything. And I kind of want to know what's going on with the email. All right, thank you.
They told me sit down, but I pulled the chair. Told them I'm the wrong one to frame, I swear. Back in 2017 they drew first blood, called it stalking, fabricated mud. No mayor involved, just a target on me, cause I spoke too loud in the land of the free. Oxford, Mississippi, deep in that game, twisting laws like ropes, tying up my name. Sesums on the move, McCutcheon in the mix. All eyes on me when I'm speaking in clicks. Took the plea, forced hand, lead to protect. But they kept on pushing, disrespect on deck. Jeff Buzz be smirking, clerk door closed. I ask about judges, the whole scene froze. Joey East waiting outside like a plot. Civil written hand, another twisted shot. Next day script, commitment by lies. Alcorn's affidavit, didn't even try. No eval, no call, no care, no proof. Just got me locked while they celebrated truth. Little sign the order, it was nothing. Didn't blink once, just rubber stamp bluffing. Thrown into below, padded cell in sight. North Mid State Hospital, taking my rights. I walked out different, but I ain't done. Called Alcorn direct, put truth on run. She told me the sheriff asked her to file. I dropped a grievance that traveled a mile. Sent it to Rogers, Little, to court. Within 24 hours, they struck with force. Second affidavit, same play, more dirt. This time I'm snatched while my wife still hurt. Just came from the ER, baby's lungs too weak. They taking me down while my newborn speaks. Solitary box, 7 days in the pit. Then to East Miss, more meds, more shit. I missed my son's birth for a false claim shit. Layton PD, from afar. Oxford sending smoke like an unmarked car. Sessions breached every boundary line. Pete, like a fed up spy. Richards fired off, defamation mail. 139 names like a network trail. Grammar request blocked, stonewall by Arrington. Call him on the... I showed up at the FBI, docs in hand. Salt Lake City, tried to take a stand. They wanted ID, just take my word. No, they got hot, they made it absurd. Kicked me off the public lot, wrote down my tag. All while I'm live, letting truth unbag.
We stand at a crossroads in our nation's history. A moment when the very fabric of our constitutional republic hangs in the balance. Throughout history, great nations have fallen, not from external invasion, but from the internal decay, from the corruption of their founding principles. We faced the greatest domestic threat to liberty since our founding, not from foreign terrorists, but from complicit federal agencies, unelected bureaucrats, and officials who believe the Constitution is optional. I'm not here to make you feel comfortable. I'm here to wake you up. The founders warned us about this moment. They understood the natural tendency of power to corrupt and expand. Jefferson wrote that the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time. Franklin warned that we had a republic if you can keep it. But what happens when institutions designed to protect liberty become its greatest threat? You'll learn that agencies meant to protect you will either look away or actively shield corruption. That courts don't always seek the truth. That oversight has become meaningless. And most damning, the average American doesn't even care. Look at the classified documents now exposed. Look at surveillance programs. Look at selective prosecution. Look at federal agencies weaponized against political opponents. Look at whistleblowers persecuted, not celebrated. Labeled traitors instead of patriots. Look at intelligence agencies collecting your data without warrants. Look at law enforcement that can seize property without charging you with a crime. Let me say this plainly. The Constitution is under siege, and those with power to protect it are either complicit or cowards. If you think you're immune, you're not. What the state can do to one, it can do to all. The framers understood liberty is not the natural state of governance. Throughout history, tyranny has been the norm, freedom the exception.
The Bill of Rights doesn't grant freedoms. It acknowledges rights you already possess by virtue of being human. These aren't suggestions. They're hard limits on government power. They're the conditions under which we, the people, agreed to be governed. Today, these boundaries are being erased. The First Amendment, compromised by censorship. The Fourth Amendment, gutted by mass surveillance. The Fifth, undermined by parallel construction and asset forfeiture. This isn't partisan. This is liberty versus tyranny. Constitution versus convenience. Every ignored complaint, every denied hearing, every rubber-stamped warrant, every prosecutor who turns a blind eye, and every judge who lets it slide. That's how the rule of law dies. Not in chaos, but in paperwork. First, they target the troublemakers, then the critics, then ordinary citizens who just want their constitutional rights. I used to believe that exposing corruption would correct the system, that truth would prevail. But I was wrong. The system doesn't fix itself when corruption is the system. When you say, "It's not my fight," or "I'd rather not get involved," you're not avoiding battle. You're surrendering. The First Amendment, stripped one voice at a time. The Fourth, gutted, one data breach at a time. The 14th, ignored, one retaliatory prosecution at a time. And the question is, what will you do about it? Silence is no longer neutral. It's not safe. It's betrayal. Our founders risked everything because they understood that some principles are worth more than comfort, worth more than security, worth more than life itself.
You have reached the Salt Lake City Division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. FBI Salt Lake City.
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I had a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If somebody is if they're in your visitor parking lot, is that considered private property, like owned by the FBI, the visitor parking lot?
I am not positive, if I'm to be honest. I'd have to ask like someone in security or something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, are you an agent, or are you...
I'm just an operator.
You're an operator? Okay. Is there somebody there that I could speak with about that has... Because I need the answer to that question. It's actually, it's very important, actually.
Can I have a bit more context for that? Like what the scenario situation is that you're wanting to know, just so I can find the best person for you to speak to?
Well, all right. I'll explain the situation exactly verbatim. So I had gone to U.S. District Court in Salt Lake City. I filed a large civil rights lawsuit because of major. It was so egregious. I'm a member of the press. I'm a journalist, and I'm an author with a book about to release. And there was illegal surveillance that was run on me by a city police officer, actually higher ranking over at the Oxford, Mississippi Police Department. And there's a couple other things about him that's a little odd, but after I filed the lawsuit, I brought a sworn declaration, sworn affidavit, basically, a declaration, to the FBI office because I wanted to press the matter of this being a major federal crime. I mean, this is a major attack on freedom of the press. You know, on not only that, so much more than just that, but the fact that, I mean, this was just way outside of the bounds. My personal address got doxed to 139 law enforcement officers, you know, with false information, because it was, you know, this was a gaslighting campaign from Oxford. And it just so happens that officer went through the FBI, you know, National Academy. And what was so odd about Monday is all I wanted to do was just turn in my sworn declaration, and I couldn't. You know, it blows my mind that here it is, a sworn declaration that's already filed in court, and the FBI won't even come and take it out of my hands, and it doesn't even accuse them of anything. And so what does that make me think when, you know, I was coming up there just simply to turn in that, you know, that declaration to show my intent right there. But then the matter's made worse, and this is why I asked you about the parking lot, is when the agents wouldn't come out, basically they were requiring a background check, you know, and I stood on my Fourth Amendment grounds of, you know, a victim of a crime shouldn't have to be forced to basically give up their Fourth Amendment right to have a full background check run on them. It's about principle. So I was working on a story as a journalist. Once again, this gets back into freedom of the press and you know, of course, all the other civil liberties like freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, you know, the right to petition the government for redress. I was in the parking lot reading this declaration that the FBI refused to come out and get from me. When I'm on like number 7 of it, 2 FBI agents walk out of the guard shack and come up to me, and without making any other conversation or saying anything else, they threaten me. I'm threatened with arrest. He said, I'm just going to tell you one time that you need to leave, or you're going to be charged with trespassing. And I said, I'm a journalist. Like, this right here is publicly accessible. Okay, I was not at the gate or past the gate. This was the visitor parking lot. I had every right to be there. I know the answer to this question. That's why I was, but I wanted to actually see if somebody would just, you know, state the obvious that, you know, that's a visitor parking lot, and I was there for a lawful purpose. The FBI would not take a complaint, and then they threatened me with arrest for trespassing on public property when I was there, basically, you know, in exercise of all 4 of the 5 protections of the First Amendment. Then to make matters worse, an agent goes around to the back of my car and jots down my tag number. And I told him to get the fuck out of the way. And he said, no, I was just getting your tag number. It's on video. It's so outrageous. So I need to, at this point, it's that big of a deal because, you know, just how out there this whole thing has gotten, that I expect to actually talk to somebody on this, you know, like now, because it's that, you know, I think that should be common sense. I know there's somebody in there, you know, y'all may not have a field agent open, but I guarantee you there's a supervisor in there that I can speak to about this issue.
Okay, yeah, so I can go ahead and see if our, I believe one of our on-call agents should be available So I can, all right, I'll just put you on a brief hold, and I'll go ahead and reach out to one of our agents and see if someone can meet with you right now.
Okay. Well, you know, ma'am, it might be better if I just speak to a supervisor. That's probably, honestly, yeah. Please don't put me in touch with an agent. That's not gonna. I don't see that being very productive at all. I really don't. I need to speak to a supervisor at this point, because no agent could satisfy me with what they did to me on Monday. It's gotta come from a supervisor.
Okay. I will see what I can do for you. Again, I'm not sure if any of our supervisory agents would be available, but I'll.
Well, this is actually, you know, if they're not available, this is actually a pretty serious issue that somebody needs to make themselves available for.
Yeah, and again, I understand, so I'll put you on a brief hold, and I will see, and I'll for sure be able to get someone to speak to you right now.
Okay.
So I'll just put you on a brief hold, and then, yeah, I'll get back to you as quick as I can.
All right.
Thank you for holding. This is Brett.
Hey, Brett. Are you a supervisor there at the FBI?
So I'm not a supervisor. I'm a special agent here, and I'm our duty agent for the day.
Are you? Okay. And you said your name was Brett?
Yes, Brett.
Okay. All right, Brett. So I've got a question for you. If I'm up there, well, I guess the easiest question is the visitors parking lot up there at the FBI building, you know, outside of the gate where the visitors park at for the guard shack, is that privately owned by the FBI?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not sure.
So, well, if you don't know the answer to that question and the lady I talked to doesn't, then how is it that those two cowboys that y'all have working up there as agents, I'm sure you've heard about it through shop talk up there, as far as what happened on Monday?
I haven't, actually.
You haven't heard anything about what happened up there at the FBI office on Monday?
No, but I'm happy to hear about it, though.
Well, okay, it's shocking. It's beyond shocking. It's appalling. So I am the plaintiff in a major civil rights lawsuit that just got filed in Salt Lake City on Monday. It was a multi-state conspiracy. It was a multi-jurisdictional conspiracy. There's a senior police officer in Oxford, Mississippi at the Oxford Police Department by the name of Sessoms.
Sorry, can you spell that for me?
Sessums. I've got the whole article on my news site, but I'm sure the thing is, what happened Monday is just, it's got me so confused, and I'm hoping that you might be able to, you're probably not going to be able to shed any light on it, you know, but this, so what happened was I filed this lawsuit because I found out that this police officer in Oxford, Mississippi was running an illegal surveillance campaign on me. So I'm actually a journalist, and I'm an author with a book set to publish this month that's an expose. Oxford and Lafayette County they've committed some of the worst of crimes. I was actually illegal. I was sentenced to prison for a year. I was given a 1-year sentence for I I'm banished from Lafayette County in Oxford because of part of a witch hunt charge that they put against me. I called the FBI on October 28th, 2022. The FBI office in Oxford. It was around 10:45 in the morning, and I spoke to an agent, and I told him, I said, I've got evidence of law enforcement corruption involving the Holly Springs Police Department as well as the Lafayette County Sheriff's Department, and I'd like to have a time to come up there and meet with an agent. And he said, well, we don't do appointments, we do walk-ins. And I said, and you know, keep this in mind, I was recording the phone call because, I mean, obviously, like when you hear how crazy this is, I mean, no wonder, okay? So me and him work out, basically, I'm going to come up there an hour and a half later. I hang up the phone and I call the Sheriff's Department because in order to be in compliance with the court, with the banishment, the sham banishment, it had to be a lawful purpose, and I had to let the Sheriff's Department know in advance. So I called the Sheriff's Department and I said, you know, I need to speak with an officer about me coming into Oxford. I need to, you know, I have a lawful reason. They transferred me to this deputy named Candace Beavers. And Candace Beavers, I convey everything perfectly to her. That call was recorded as well. She calls me back twice to ask me like crazy questions like, what time is your appointment? And I told her specifically when she asked me that, they said they don't do appointments, they do walk-ins, but we talked about me going up there about an hour and a half later. Well, so when I go up to there to the FBI office, no agent would come out and meet with me. You know, I wanted to save myself, you know, from wasting gas and driving all the way in, plus, you know, having to go through the hoops of that, you know, calling and getting permission to go into Oxford, which is crazy. So nobody met with me, and then 3 days later, I think it's 3 days later, I was driving home from a city hall meeting, and I got pulled over and taken into custody for a probation revocation hearing, where it was alleged that I came to Oxford to the FBI office without a lawful purpose and without an appointment or without permission. But that's 100% a lie, and the call recordings show that to the T. I'll be happy to you know, send anything and everything. I've literally got it all. But I ended up getting, the FBI decided they were going to stay silent on the matter. I'd love to know, like, what, when it's that blatantly clear. I mean, the least that you could do is come out and say, well, yeah, you know, he talked to one of our guys, and yeah, the guy got screwed over. Yeah, this deputy completely lied and sent him to prison. But it gets worse than that. So after I cleared that 1 year sentence, because I didn't have the call recordings on me to even show in court, and the judge wouldn't continue it. So I served the sentence out, and I get out August 1st of 2023. When I got out, I did what any normal person would do after they sat in prison for something, you know, that was intentional lies on stand in court. And I exposed her for what she did. I published the call recordings, and I put them over the top of the court transcript, where it's actually perfectly in line, and you can, as you're reading it, you can hear how it's completely contradicted on the phone. There's absolutely no, she 100% perjured herself, and she did it to shut me up. They did it to get rid of a problem, okay, to them, because I'm a journalist, and I'm trying to vindicate myself from something they did back in 2017. So I'm out of prison August 1st, 2023. I put that video out like a couple of days later, and it got a lot of hits on YouTube in like a week's time, like 50,000 views, because it's the truth, and people care about the truth. And I'm driving to Galveston, Texas to go meet up with some other journalists because I received anonymous tips that there was racial profiling that was going on with the Galveston Police Department that they were making false arrests, and I wanted to go and independently examine that claim, meet up with some other journalists. As I'm going into Galveston, I get pulled over by Galveston Police Department. And the officer, the first question out of his mouth, this is August 11th at 2 o'clock in the morning, the first question out of his mouth is, "So are you an auditor, man?" I said, "I'm not answering questions." Like this whole stop felt really funny. He then gets mad and he said, "Well, have you been drinking tonight? I smell alcohol." Here's the God's honest truth. I haven't touched a drop of alcohol since the very end of 2018 or like January of 2019. I told the officer that. He kept wanting to force a field sobriety test, and I said, "Give me a breathalyzer." He wouldn't give me a breathalyzer. I was charged basically with suspicion of DWI, even though I kept demanding a breathalyzer. Well, come to find out, along the way, through discovery and everything, is that this was all a conspiracy involving Lafayette County Sheriff's Department, and in fact involving that same deputy, Candace Beavers, that I put that video out showing that she intentionally lied on stand to send me to prison. She's on call recordings calling that guy. So is the other deputy that's featured in that video, Hobie James. Both of them are on call recordings talking to Osteen. They wanted to shut me up. This was their way of shutting me up. They had the charges rigged, so I'm sitting in jail waiting for confirmation that there's no alcohol in my system. I'm in jail for, 11 months in Galveston because Lafayette County took out a no bond hold on me to say that they were revoking my probation because of the charge, when the charge was 100% conspired upon. And they sentenced me, Lafayette County extradited me from Galveston 2 weeks before I was going to go to trial and prove my innocence. They dismissed the felony charge and they recharged it as a misdemeanor 2 weeks before I could even go and prove my innocence. I get extradited to Lafayette County. They hold
Lafayette County is where
Lafayette
Beavers was?
Yeah, Lafayette County, Mississippi is where Beavers is and Hobie James is. And they hold a mock kangaroo trial for a revocation hearing. And they have this officer in Galveston. His name is Osteen, William Osteen. They have him testify over Zoom, and he tells nothing but lies. He actually, it's on the court transcript. They asked if there was alcohol in my system, and he said there was alcohol, in my system. The toxicology report shows there was zero alcohol. He, on his affidavit to do a blood draw, he claimed that my eyes were dilated or something. But at the revocation hearing, he saw that my eyes were pinpoint, my pupils were pinpoint. Okay, there were complete lies told, so that the burden of proof at revocation hearings is so low. It's not like trial. That was their plan. Hold me as long as possible in Galveston, extradite me before I get a trial, and then hold a revocation hearing because the burden of proof is so low, and use an officer's lies. And so I get sentenced to 2 years in prison on July 18th, 2024.
In Lafayette County?
In Lafayette County. And
You said 18th of 24?
It was July 18th, 2024.
Okay.
And the DA there's some funny business going on there, man. It's the assistant DA that wrote up the petition to revoke my probation. His name was Stephen Jubera. He, coincidentally, the day that I got extradited from Galveston, he got fired or was forced to resign. And what was weird about it is it was because of Steve Jubera's fabrications, putting fictitious information in the petition to revoke my probation, that the governor of Mississippi actually, rubber stamped a governor's warrant, authenticating documents under Mississippi law that were not authenticated. It was, he signed off on this warrant saying that these, that the papers that were provided to him for the governor's warrant were authenticated under Mississippi law, but there was, like, everything was incorrect and false and completely made up, fictitious. And I pointed that out in court. The case number is completely made up. It's not what the case number associated over in Galveston. It was they had the charge wrong. They had the case number wrong. They said that I was on probation for possession of a controlled substance, but I've never been charged or convicted with possession of a controlled substance. So like, the whole thing was, but that's honestly, that's just peas in this whole thing. I don't really care about that whole ordeal now. The fact is, my sentence was vacated because it was declared unlawful, because they knew all along that even if, which the results showed there was no alcohol in my system, but even if I got shit hammered drunk and I was driving the roads of Galveston and got a DWI over there, it couldn't unless I crashed into somebody, unless I caused damage, it couldn't lawfully have been considered a third or more DWI, which is a felony. And that's what they needed in Lafayette County. They knew that a misdemeanor charge would be treated as a technical violation for the purposes of a probation revocation hearing. They needed a felony to be committed, because a felony being committed when it comes to revocation hearings, they can actually go wherever on how long to put them in prison. Okay? And the maximum by law, even if I committed the crime of DWI, the maximum by law that they could have ever revoked my probation for was 120 days. But they gave me 2 years. And I had a Innocence Project attorney with MacArthur Justice Center that took my case on and filed the post-conviction relief, and it got vacated on January 21st of this year. I was released from prison January 22nd of this year. Because of Lafayette County's nonsense, my wife and kids, all my kids, live in Lafayette County. So I get out of prison, something that 100% is a sham. It's 100% a conspiracy. I've lost everything. And then I can't even, I'm sitting there broke because of what they did, and I can't even go into the county. So basically, I move across the country. I have a friend that's out in, my general area, and I moved out here because he encouraged me to do that because of everything that Mississippi had done.
When you say your general area, you mean out here in Utah?
Yeah.
Okay. And that was shortly after you got out in January of this year?
Yeah, so I moved to Layton February 1st of this year.
Okay.
And so basically like a week after I got out of prison. So I get out here and I'm working on my book, and I'm a journalist, and I basically I was recording on a public sidewalk. It was a public sidewalk out in front of a bank. It was just, I don't even see myself as an auditor anymore, man. Honestly, I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I'm really big on our constitutional rights, and mine had been taken a freaking sledgehammer to. So I believe in protecting our rights at all costs, because, you know, the things that have happened to me have been just downright god awful. And so I was just standing on a public sidewalk videotaping with my camera phone, and it was a silent audit. I actually congratulated the officers at the end for their professionalism. Like, I wasn't there to cause any issues or anything. I just really, honestly, I wanted to see that they handled it, you know, in the correct way, and they did. And I gave them praise for that. Well, I find out when I'm trying to make the public records request to get the body camera, to get the police report and the 911 call that came in that brought him out there, I used an alias, because it's a pseudonym that I have taken on, because, I mean, a lot of authors use a pseudonym as well, and also because of the gaslighting and the things that have happened. I just, you know, I felt comfortable making my request under my pseudonym. And so I told Mark Arrington, basically the city legal department took it over, and they were telling me that they had my request ready. I would have to show ID to get it, but the Utah grandma laws don't require, you know, showing of ID to get public record. And this is where, obviously, if I'm using a pseudonym, I wanted to make the request more or less anonymously, because I've been retaliated on by law enforcement before. I've been gaslighted. All right, so if it's a public record, because that's what it was, there was no crime committed. And the officers never ID'd me. They never asked me for ID, because they even said I never committed a crime. So, you know, I'm not identified in the report, but the body cams, you know, you clearly tell it's me. So I get a call the very next day after I meet with Mark, first thing in the morning, and he says, "Hey, Matthew." And I was like, "What?" He said, "Hey, Matthew." I said, "Why are you calling me Matthew?" I kept, like, over and over, whenever you say something else, like when you call me something else, my name's Don. It's Don Matthews, okay? It's not, no, he said, "No, your name is Matthew Reardon, you're from Lafayette County, you had to deal with Galveston, yada, 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 yada." And I was like, whoa, okay? So how does he get all that information if all I've given him is Don Matthews? Well, I know the answer to that question. It's the same sons of bitches that have done this to me before. So I request public record to get...
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Yeah.
I missed a part there. Who was this that called you that you were talking to?
So this is Mark Arrington. He's actually a defendant in the lawsuit that I just filed on Monday. It's Reardon versus City of Layton, ETL. The suit is against the Layton Police Department, one of their lieutenants, the Oxford, Mississippi Police Department, this rogue captain that... So here's where it got... Okay, so this is what you got to know right here with everything that happened. So I found out through the public record request, and I had to put in a notice of intent to sue just to basically get it, okay? And they still didn't comply with it, and so I had to file suit because of how you know, absolutely sickening all this was. But I find out they give me the emails that have to do with my name, and sure enough, Captain Captain Hildon Sessoms, Hildon. So he sends an email to the Layton...
This is the captain from Layton?
This
Or
is
the captain from.
no, this is the captain from Oxford Police Department, Hilden Sessoms.
Okay.
Sends an email to the Layton, I guess probably the Layton supervisors at the Layton Police Department. There's like 4 that it's addressed to. And what he says in it is, actually, I've got it right here. So he says, he sends this on Wednesday, February 5th at 8:09 a.m. I didn't move into my place until the nighttime of the 1st, and that's when my plane got here, and I didn't sign the lease, I think, until like the next day or the day after. Well, on February 5th, Wednesday, Hilden Sessoms sends an email to 4 individuals at the police department saying, "Good morning, my name is Hilden Sessoms, and I am a captain with the Oxford, Mississippi Police Department and a graduate of the FBI National Academy. I'm reaching out regarding someone your department recently encountered. Matthew Oliver Reardon, date of birth 3/24/1987, is a former Oxford resident, a convicted felon, and a persistent issue for our department. It appears he is now moved to your city. We discovered a YouTube video in which he conducted a First Amendment audit at Zion's Bank in Layton. Given his history with us and in Texas, I wanted to share some background information. From our research, his current address is," and then he puts my address down. "Below are just a few of the links to previous incidents involving him," and these are, they're just gaslighted articles that I feel like, there's a good chance that they were behind, because I feel like the Oxford Eagle is in the Lafayette County's pocket.
And these were all links you said to like different news articles, or?
Yeah, and
Okay.
And so what happened was this lieutenant responds back asking for the link to the Layton silent audit from the sidewalk, and he sends it, okay? And then where it gets really bizarre and crazy is Lieutenant Riley Richins, Richins. He is a lieutenant with the Layton City Police Department. Sent an email at February 5th, 9:46 a.m. So basically an hour later after he got the email from Sessoms. Subject line, Matthew Reardon - First Amendment Auditor. He sends this email to 139 people, including PD records, PD dispatch. Like, there's some in here that, I'm sure it went to a lot more people, because it's main boxes. But
Did he send it to you out of that list?
well, no, because he had no reason to send it to me. What he was doing was this was a doxing email. This was taking information that was passed along from Oxford, and this is shocking to me. So he puts it to 139 people, saying, by way of information, we've received information that a First Amendment auditor, Matthew Oliver Reardon, has moved from Oxford, Mississippi to Layton City. His address is, and then puts my address there. Oxford PD has reported Reardon as a persistent issue for their department. In 2017, Reardon was arrested for stalking the mayor in Lafayette County. A restraining order was issued. Then in 2022, Reardon was arrested and charged with aggravated stalking when he violated the restraining order by walking into the city hall with a video camera and walked toward the mayor's office. Yesterday, Reardon did a silent audit at Zion's Bank in South Fort Lane here in Layton City. Our officers responded and handled the situation professionally. Reardon was even appreciative of their professionalism and gave our officers a pass. This serves as a good reminder to respond appropriately to these quote-unquote auditors and be professional while upholding the public's rights. Here's the YouTube link to yesterday's encounter. And you put that. But see, the thing is, I was never arrested and charged for aggravated stalking in 2017 for stalking the mayor. It had nothing to do with the mayor. So, you know, because he didn't have his facts right, because he you know, took bait from Oxford, he, you know, not only put false information out about me to 139 police officers, including my address, but also, you know, false information about the, you know, stalking the mayor in 2017, which is not correct. But I think out of everything, the most concerning thing and the big number $1 million question here is all this happened on the 5th. I got there in the evening on the 1st. I had signed the lease either the 2nd or the 3rd, and I didn't know my address for like the first week or two, because the addresses up here are so weird. I never once conveyed my address to anyone. I never put it on any paper. I never signed up for any utilities. Nothing with the DMV, literally nothing. My address was never registered online, but yet, obviously within hours of me getting here, this Oxford police captain has my address when I don't even have my address. And how they're basically doing that, I mean, if I sure hope they have some probable cause for doing that. And honestly, if they did, they would have already said that is the case as far as why they were doing that. So if they say it at this point, it's all freaking cover thy ass, and it's because that's you know, I expect them to do that, just like I expect them to doctor up police reports, to hide police reports. You know, it's the whole reason that all this happened in 2022. The stalking charge that they put against me, as a journalist, I walked into City Hall and I was going to make a public records request. And while I was in City Hall, I recorded the publicly accessible areas in City Hall because I'm a journalist and I have a YouTube channel. All right? And I was ordered out of City Hall under detainment because they said that the mayor had an active restraining order that was still valid, you know, that against me, and that my presence inside of City Hall violated, you know, was in violation of the restraining order. But, you know, and they tell me that if I go back in there again, I'm going to be arrested for trespassing in violation of the restraining order. I said, cool, I'll take the matter up at the court. That's all I need. You know, that's where it needed to go, was the court. And I was in the process of doing that. Jeff McCutcheon, the Oxford chief of police, decided to reach out on his own to the Mississippi Bureau of Investigations. And me and the Mississippi Bureau of Investigations have a long-standing, they've been very complicit in things. Like, I had reached out to them and left voicemails on like 5 different occasions because of election fraud being committed back in 2017 involving the Oxford mayor. That's the reason why that restraining order was actually there. Is I was actually so the Mayor Robin Tannehill was supposed to be elected mayor on June the 6th, 2017. I was on the docket to address City Hall, to speak out, you know, in opposition of Tannehill and her policies. and it's listed on the public city minutes. You know, it's still there. And they took out this restraining order based on what I can now prove are 100% lies, and I can prove this through public record request. Fraud was committed on the court. They used a completely bogus restraining order to silence dissent. You know, it was known publicly that I was supposed to speak out on the day of her election, and they used this restraining order as a way of you know, keeping me 500 feet away, so I can't speak out, you know, on that day. And you look at the restraining order and it's all 100% constitutionally protected activity, or it's, you know, through the public record request, they're complete embellishments and lies, or they're over exaggerations that they overstated. You know, certain things such as I mounted an aggressive online campaign against her. Okay, that's you know, acceptable in our society. You know, that's, you tell me one election where there's not an aggressive online campaign against a politician. That's you can't criminalize that. That's And then she says that I went to the City Hall Board of Aldermen meeting with a gun on my hip, and I pointed at her. I pointed at all the city council, or all the aldermen members, and called them cultural Marxists for going against the vote of the people. You know, they took the state flag of Mississippi down on city property while they were taking state-funded tax dollars from the state. The majority of the taxpayers voted for that flag the last time they held a vote, and I think it sets a bad precedent for a city to go against the, you know, to take it on themselves on a matter where there was a vote. You know, that opens the door to a lot worse issues. And so, you know, my thing was never about the stars and bars or anything. It was just simply about the integrity of a vote. And they literally went to all means to shut me up, to ruin my life. I was literally, all that came about because, and honestly, the start of my story, and this is where my book it's right now tentatively scheduled to publish on the 15th of this month. Everything starts May 1st, 2017, when I was unlawfully arrested by a sheriff's deputy in Lafayette County, standing on a public sidewalk holding the state flag of Mississippi. Literally, he pulls up and asks me if I had a permit to be there, and I said I had the First Amendment. And he said I had to have a permit to be there, or else, or by the county, or else he was going to take me to jail for disorderly conduct. And, you know, this is where it's so ironic because of the stuff that happened Monday with those two agents. You know, the fact that here we go, we return once again to a piece of public ground, and I'm threatened with arrest, and here all I'm trying to do is report a crime. I've got a sworn declaration, and these, you know, nobody will take it. And it's like they're shooing me away like a fly. But I know that, you know, the Justice for All Act, that I have rights as a victim. It may just be filed as a civil claim right now, but I'm trying to bring it as a criminal. You know, these are major federal crimes that are being committed by these people. This deputy arrested me for asking him what his badge number was. All right. The video went viral. They had to put him on administrative leave, and that's when the plan got hatched to basically indemnify themselves and get rid of their problem. So they hit me with this, you know, aggravated stalking charge on May 26, 2017. May 22nd was when I was served that restraining order by the Tannehills. Okay?
Did you say May 20, what was the day of the day?
May,
say those dates again for me.
Yeah, so May 22nd, 2017, I was on the way. So, all right, So I just skipped over a crucial little part right there that's not going to make sense unless I tell you this. So, I spoke out and was told to leave at City Hall May 16th. May 19th, I go to the bar. It's a little piano bar called Frank and Marley's that was owned by a husband and wife named Todd and Ashley Lynch. And Todd Lynch didn't really have issues with me, but Ashley did, because she saw me as a pushy salesman from whenever I was working with a company before. And long story short, because I was trying to engage her in conversation, smooth over issues in the past, she grabbed my already paid for chicken wings and threw them in the trash can and wouldn't give me a refund. So I called for a boycott of Frank and Marley's. I had a pretty good following at that time because of everything that had happened on May 1st. And, people, standing in support because it was so outrageous what that deputy did. And admitted that it was from the Lafayette County Sheriff's Department. And so I knew it had to have been Joey East. Joey has had this long vendetta against me. I never had it out for him until I figured out that he was behind everything just about that had happened to me. Like, for the longest time, I was actually going, whenever I'd see him, I thought that, I'd carry on a conversation with him. I didn't know that he was basically cutting my legs out from underneath me, like me not knowing. But he was. He was behind giving this information to Communicator, to Rachel Alcorn, to commit me. And so I filed a formal grievance against Communicator's executive director, and I served it on the judge's chambers that rubber stamped the order to have me committed based on that affidavit, because it was violations of state and federal law. And I put in there that they needed to revise their policies and provide me with the written, revisions within a certain amount of time, obviously, or I'm going to take the matter to court where it needs to be, and we'll handle it there. Well, I turned that formal letter in on February the 7th, 2021, 2022. It's February the 7th, 2022. And I serve it on the judge's chambers, and I serve it on Communicator. It's like the very next day or the day after that, a second affidavit for commitment is filed. Tell me that's not a coincidence. That, just like last time, the day after I find the records changed in circuit court and I go prying in as a concerned citizen on how these are getting changed, I get committed. Well, I get committed again, or another one's done on me when I serve this formal notice. So my wife and I were at the hospital because she's pregnant with my son, having pregnancy complications. We get home about midnight on, I think February 10th, if I remember correctly. And as we're pulling onto the road to our house, there's a sheriff's deputy at the end of the road. He pulls out and gets behind us and follows us into the driveway of the house. And as soon as he does that, he turns on the blue lights. I get out. I'm pitching a fit because, once again, well, especially when he told me that he was there to take me into custody because they filed another affidavit to commit me. All of that ended up leading. I was held in jail for 7 days before they boxed me up and sent me 2.5 hours south to the East Mississippi State Hospital in Meridian. And the day that they did that, because of all the stress of everything, what just happened with the commitment, her being, pregnant, she went into preterm labor. She gave birth to my son At 25 weeks, he weighed 2 pounds and some change. His lungs never fully developed. He actually is still on a feeding tube. He's 3 years old now. Still has a feeding tube coming out of his stomach. These people have taken this so far that, I mean, it is, somebody has got to do something about it. It's caused me so many damages. It's literally ruined my life, and it can't ever be fixed. I can't get a job. Every job that runs a background check on me because of the sham charges that Lafayette County put on me. They'll extend an offer to me, and then they'll withdraw it when they run a background check. And I've taken so much, and I'm not taking any more. And that's why, like, when those agents did that on Monday, they have no idea what all I've been through. And then, you know, it was like throwing gas on the fire, man. I want some help. I'm getting just kicked around. You know, people are wielding power in ways that they shouldn't. And I mean, what's to protect anybody else from that kind of same stuff happening? If I'm a Marine Corps veteran and I swore a lifelong oath to protect and defend our Constitution, if that's happening to me, then, I mean, look how it would be so much easier for it to happen to anybody else.
Well, it's Dawn, correct?
No, Dawn is my pseudonym.
I can call you Dawn?
Yeah, Dawn's fine. Yeah, yeah.
Dawn, do you mind if I ask you what your real name is?
Yeah, I've already told you on the call. I mean, at this point, there's no need in playing the evading game. I did it only. It's Matthew Reardon, man.
Matthew Reardon?
Yeah.
Well, like, I've been taking some notes going through, I think, like, multiple, right, these things in your life have been connected, you know, because it's your life. You've been going through this since 2017 till now, right? But there's multiple aspects here to everything you've kind of gone through, and I think you'd agree with that, whether it's in Lafayette County, whether it's in Texas, whether it was...
Well, but the common denominator here, though, that I need you to look at, is it's all... So, I mean, it's Oxford. Lafayette County is on call recordings calling Galveston. Now I can prove that Oxford, which is in Lafayette County, and where the sheriff came from, I never had any issues with Oxford for them to call me a persistent issue. I've only had one run-in with you know, and it wasn't even, you know, that big of a deal. I've not been a persistent issue to the Oxford Police Department, so I 100% believe that this came probably from the Sheriff's Department, and it was because they know that the truth is coming out about what happened with Galveston, and they didn't want it to blow up in their face a second time. They needed somebody else to take the fall if it did, you know, if it did come to light, which it did, and you know, right now the heat is on the Oxford Police Department because obviously they 100% ran illegal surveillance. I mean, can you see it as anything else whenever I'd only been here for 3 days and hadn't written my address on anything? And like you can't just, y'all investigate federal crimes. They cannot just run, you know, my address and basically pass my address out for no reason. Can they?
I don't know the reasonings behind and kind of everything you've gone over, so I don't want to make a statement saying yay or nay, right? But I'm hearing what your frustration with everything. You know, if you just arrived and you're feeling doxxed already, like you've shared with me, like I can understand that. And that's kind of why I've been taking all these notes, and I wanted to put this in detail for you.
I want to know. I mean, here's the here's where my head is at on all of this is I 100% believe no city police department 20-something hours away is going to have the type of, is going to have the easy ability to do that. So it's going to take the help of a federal agency. And it was, I 100% believe that it was a alphabet agency, and is it, but what I 100 or what I'm really starting to honestly feel like is the fact that Hilton Sessoms proudly said, that he is a graduate of the FBI National Academy, and this is, I'm down here in y'all's jurisdiction, and then he has my address, but there's no way that, my address wasn't entered anywhere. So the process of elimination there would, kind of almost point right to y'all's office.
Yeah, it's hard to say how. That's depending on the dates and how that address was obtained.
Yeah. So I want to find out, especially because it's now in court, so it's gonna become a matter of discovery.
Is that I was meaning to ask you if that was from the court. You went over earlier a couple emails, that specifically that email that had your address and information to send out to 139 employees. Did you obtain that through the discovery process, or how did you get that information?
I got that information through the Utah GRAMA Act, basically the Public Records Act. It's kind of like FOIA. And at this point, basically things hadn't progressed to the point where it was an active, legal situation on the table. So they ended up turning that over, and yes, so it's now, there are exhibits in the lawsuit. I've got this sworn declaration that I tried to turn into the FBI. But it really, it's filed in civil. It's filed in district court, in the civil claim. But I wanted to bring it over there and give it to somebody. I would really love to just, I need to hear that. Well, we don't even have to have the discussion or the debate about the background checks, because obviously I feel very strongly about that, and that's not going to change. But what I do think that at the very bare minimum deserve to know, deserve to have this answer, is on when it comes to somebody submitting a criminal complaint or making a criminal complaint that has a sworn declaration, a sworn affidavit, okay, it carries a lot of weight. And I haven't seen y'all's policy, but I'm pretty sure, because I do know about the Justice for All Act, that the U.S. Department of Justice, has implemented. And if somebody is coming to y'all as a victim and wanting to file something, there's no question about it that it violates the Justice for All Act to not take the complaint and to not even speak to that person. And that's without getting into what those two agents did when they threatened me with arrest and wrote down my tag number just for simply reading my declaration out in the parking lot. The very basic fundamentals of the First Amendment. There's no, there is no gray area. There's no, that one, and that's honestly, I want to hear you say that, because as a federal special agent, okay, federal law enforcement officer, you also took an oath to protect, to uphold and defend the Constitution. And how do you do that if you don't know what those rights are? And so the First Amendment covers 5 elements there. And I would like to know exactly how me standing in that parking lot and reading my declaration does not fall under 4 out of those 5 protections under the first. I mean, that doesn't take research, and I'm just saying, if that's the case, if it's exactly as I say, which you'll see through the evidence that it is, I mean, do you think that that's wrong?
Matthew, I wasn't here Monday.
I know you weren't here Monday. Look, I know
everything you've given and shared with me is all I really know. But however, being a duty agent that I've kind of assisted before, I know we have our process to clear you, get you into the the conference rooms, interview rooms, whichever, for you to talk to the agent on duty. I have had individuals before who haven't wanted to go through that process, and I just literally spoke to them through the fence.
They wouldn't even do that, man. And that's and see, that's the thing is, there shouldn't be any question about it. About there is no even if I didn't want to, which I didn't want to identify myself for a background check because it was about principle right there. I don't think a victim should be forced. Plus, it's a waste of resources. But what I'm saying is, it's still, there's no excuse for violating somebody's First Amendment right like that. And I need, like, I appreciate you being so helpful and attentive to this, and but if I can't hear you on this phone say that is wrong, because I mean, like I said, just like me, you also swore that oath, and defending the Constitution is paramount, first and foremost. So based on what I've told you, if that is the case, you should be able to automatically know, or else that's kind of a problem to uphold that oath and make sure that others' rights are being upheld and are not being violated. It's kind of hard to do if you can't even say that what I said was wrong, because that's, I mean, there is no, you can't get any more crystal clear than that. I mean, I'm a member of the press, okay? I was engaging in freedom of speech and reading my declaration on a live stream. And then, I was peacefully assembled. I wasn't causing a ruckus or anything. I was peacefully assembled, and I was petitioning our government for a redress of grievances. The FBI wouldn't take my sworn declaration, and so I decided that what I was going to do is, and I had already, I said up front, if y'all don't take it, this is what I'm going to have to do. I just, I'm well within my rights, and I was petitioning the government for a redress of grievances, because this is not right that I can't turn this in. So I guess I gotta,
Yeah, definitely don't want you jumping the fence. It's a good choice to not do that.
No, I didn't say anything about jumping the fence. Yeah. No, I didn't say that. No, I said.
No, I know, Matthew. I know.
Oh, yeah.
So, and this is kind of where I understand your situation, where you're coming from, but I don't have all the facts of the matter, so I don't want to make a statement on that.
No,
that wouldn't be right for me to jump to a conclusion.
I'm not, but no, I'm not asking you. I'm saying, I'm not asking you to make a call on my particular case, but I'm saying that let's take the situation as a hypothetical, and let's say that somebody was out on that parking lot. And so this way it gets it away completely from that. If somebody was out on that parking lot, and if they were live streaming, and if they were reading a petition, a declaration that y'all's office refused to take or even speak with them, okay, and then agents went outside and bullied the guy and told him that if he didn't leave, that he was going to be threatened with, or that he was going to be charged with trespassing, just first thing out of their mouth. And then to, you know, when there's a verbal back and forth, and that person got in their car to leave, they go around and they jot down his tag number. I mean, if that particular situation happened, would that be a violation of a policy, and also would that be a violation of that person's constitutional rights under the First Amendment?
I'm going to defer to the same thing I said just a minute ago. Even if we're talking in speculation and hypotheticals, the very first question you asked me when I got on this call was about the property and where that line is. And since I don't know that part, I don't think I can go further and answer that.
I know, but now,
but what I want you to know, Matthew, is I hear your story and I empathize with you and I understand, and I'm documenting kind of the things we've been speaking about so I can get this recorded. And I think that's kind of your goal.
Well, it is, right? but I'm also, you got to understand my concern now. I've got quite a concern about what's going to go in that report, and because I mean, it's obvious. I'm not trying to, like I said, I appreciate your, the way that you've handled this call and all that, but I mean, that right there, if I build the scene for you and exactly, I mean, because that's what happened. You look at the security tapes, you look at my video, you see that's what happened. I mean, but not taking a position on that, I mean, when you're a sworn agent to uphold and defend the Constitution, to not be able to immediately identify that as a First Amendment violation, major First Amendment violation, it's deeply concerning to me. And then it's also kind of like, okay, well, that's, this gets into another reason why so many people across America don't trust law enforcement and hate law enforcement, is because of this whole, back the blue, and just because they're in the department, we're going to turn a blind eye and basically not even call out what they did was wrong. Because obviously, there can be no doubt that was, that it was what it was. And, if you can't tell me that it is, even if I'm building a hypothetical scene for you, and you can't tell me if that particular scene is honestly, it makes me really wonder, what's going in that report. Especially when, and you can't blame me for thinking that because of what the FBI has done to me in the past. Like the fact
that report, and kind of that's what I was leading a little earlier for you, because you just talking to me, right? You're talking to one individual. You already asked me prior to if I was a supervisor. I informed you I'm not. I'm just the duty agent today, to talk you through everything and go through your what you wanted to report. We also have an online reporting option, right? And you're concerned about whose eyes are on it, who's going to be there to help you. If it's just one individual that isn't doing the job properly that you're concerned about, well, submitting these reports on our tip line is going to get those eyes on multiple individuals, which is what I would say is to better further your confidence in the fact that it's not just an individual you have an issue with that you had that altercation with on Monday, however that wants to be reviewed. It's not just me. It's not just him.
So, and
that it's going to go to our headquarters, where they then disseminate that down to the different field offices. It gets its eyes on multiple people, right?
Yeah, and I've heard I've heard that one, like as far as it's quite common. We investigated ourselves and we found nothing wrong. It's kind of, and I guess we could say, case in point, prime example, you should be able to tell me that that's wrong, what those agents did, in that situation. You should be able to tell me that that's wrong. but you're not telling me that, you know.
Yeah, I don't have all the facts. I wasn't involved in another round. Literally, all I've heard of it is your side of the story for the last, we've been on the call here
No, I get it,
and so it's just a statement that's not fair to everyone involved to make.
Yeah,
I can hear the hypotheticals, but I don't work on hypotheticals.
I know.
I work in facts.
Yeah, and I wish
you're putting me in that position of wanting me to make a statement that I don't feel comfortable in because, like I said, I don't have all the facts surrounding the scenario, and I'm here to help you.
I know you are, man,
I'm not necessarily here to bolster a claim or anything of that nature.
No,
I'm just doing everything you provided me, and that's what I'm here to do.
I just wish, I just wish it was, that was treated with, if it was treated reciprocally. It was, same on the other, as it was basically looked at under the same standard, because, without knowing the facts, law enforcement has weaponized and used their power and the badge to take my liberty, and I look at like, the federal definition of kidnapping. I think it's 18 U.S. Code 1200 or 30. I can't remember off the top of my head, but whoever unlawfully seizes, inveigles, decoys, and holds that person for, ransom. And it's like, if somebody's unlawfully seized, okay, if they're unlawfully arrested, if somebody jumps to facts without looking at it, like is what is always going to happen when it comes to me on the receiving end. But when it's me making the complaint, it's flopped around the other way. It's just not, it's not fair.
Well, Matthew, I have a few things I wanted to share with you, if that's all right, just in terms of, you've given me some information. I'm going to send this as a report. And you've given, like I said, a lot of the details. Mine will be more of a summary. I'll submit that. It'll get into the eyes of her supervisor, and then disseminate it out accordingly. But ideally, what I'd like to ask you to do, is you've got a lot of facts, you've got a lot of details, I'm sure a lot more than what we've covered over this last hour and a half. And that way it'll get to the appropriate areas to investigate and review as well, since you're kind of spanning more than just the Salt Lake City area of operation. We have our FBI tip line, and there is a specific option in there for civil rights, for corruption.
I've done that, man. They've never taken it seriously. That's why I wanted to speak to an agent. I've called the tip line several times before. The claims that I made were 100% serious.
I absolutely believe you in that. And then it's just something I just wanted to give you another tool, right? Because I'm going to submit this for review. It's going to go.
I'm just going to send
the supervisors here, and they're going to, assign it to an agent to do a little preliminary research. And that's just kind of where that stumbles across is depending or not. Like I said, if you've got this over from 2017, I believe, is one of the first notated aspects we reviewed and talked about. There's going to be a lot of details there, and a lot more details because there's a lot more to follow up on, a lot more to review, and that's where I was pointing you to that tip.
Oh, the book will be the freaking holy grail. Like it literally, it's got everything. It's got the entire story of everything that happened going back to 2017. It's called American Injustice.
You're planning on publishing that later this year?
Yeah. I plan on publishing it this month.
Oh, this month.
And that's why, honestly, Oxford's doing what they're doing. They did what they did. Okay? is they're, I mean, I just, my life, literally a wrecking ball was taken to it. I was forcefully separated from my kids. Just like literally robbed me of everything. It's, you know, I wish somebody would have just taken it seriously a long time ago, when I kept going to people and kept going to people and kept going to people. But I mean, even to this day, you know, I'm having to, you know, that shouldn't have, none of that shit should have happened. Sessoms shouldn't have even gotten my address. He shouldn't have even been looking into me in the first place. I don't even know Sessoms, okay? But, you know, none of that had to happen. The doxed email, like, why are you making such a big deal about, first of all, I'm not a First Amendment auditor, I'm a journalist. I did that one silent audit on the sidewalk outside of Layton Bank, but that was it. That was just because, you know, I thought that was actually I'd seen many people do that, and honestly, as far as you know, First Amendment goes, that's probably the most respectful way. You know, it's not actually sitting there and having an argument with somebody or anything. You know, it's just to see how they handle it, you know. But that was the one and only one that I did. And, you know, they marked me as a First Amendment auditor. They say that I was arrested for stalking the mayor in 2017, and they put my address out. You shouldn't, like, it's almost like, all right, that's drawing a bullseye on somebody's back. Hey, it's First Amendment auditor. This guy, right here, here's his address. What sense does that make?
I absolutely understand kind of your frustration and why you're going through us to share all this information. So
yeah, I'd ask for people to please put themselves in my situation, and just just try to imagine what that's like to have served your country, to have sworn a lifelong oath to protect and defend the Constitution, for these intentional attacks to happen, and they set off a chain reaction of more to come, because every time they do something, they then have to cover that up with something else. It's like putting a Band-Aid on it. But it's got the liability wake has gotten so wide, it can't even be hidden anymore. And honestly, they don't even care about covering it up at this point. It's gotten so far out of hand. And I want y'all to actually do something about this.
Like I said, I'm taking detailed notes from our conversation. I'm going to put this in a report. I can't guarantee that it's going to, become a full-blown investigation or anything of that nature.
Oh, I'm demanding, as bad as serious as these crimes are. I've already sent one Inspector General complaint in, and I'm about to send a second one in. Is the Inspector General still employed over in Washington? I know there have been a lot of job cuts here lately.
Yeah, that's the question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I mean, I don't want to detract you from doing whatever you feel is necessary and right in your your process.
I mean, it's
going to let you know kind of like what I'm going to do. I'm going to get this documented for you, and I don't want to make any false promises. There's a lot of complaints, and unfortunately, there's a lot of criteria, federal nexus, things of that nature. But I'm going to get this report documented. I'm going to get it to the right individuals, and it's going to go through the process from there. Whether it is or is not investigated is beyond my control, what I can promise or say to you, but I'm going to say I'm going to do what I need to do to get this into the system for you. So,
well, let me make one suggestion right there. If they weren't expending the cost to run background checks on every single person that speaks with an FBI agent, I would say that there would probably, and if that's, and especially if that's not an isolated problem, like if other branches are doing the same thing that y'all are doing as far as like the background checks, then I can't imagine what the cost is. And I would love, actually, that's probably, I need to do a check on that, because like they would be able to hire more FBI agents that could then, if it's really a personnel, a staff problem, you know, that's not a really good excuse, because look at all the wastage, you know, on...
I think there might be a semantics issue there, because it's, by all means, I mean, I'm sure you've heard of background checks for employment. You've spoken about those. Those don't happen in a day. They don't even happen in an hour, right? Those take time. The information we're looking for, I wouldn't classify a quote as a background check. We're going to do a records check, look at your information, understanding who we're talking to, and then in addition, if you're asking for permission to come past the security gate and come onto grounds, we need to have a full understanding of you and your background. Like I said, some people haven't wanted to do that, and I've spoken with them through the fence before. That there are some options in that way. You know, how everything's handled is unique and different from everyone's circumstances. But for the most part, if you wanted to come on the property and speak with us versus doing like what we're doing here on the phone, you know, we do expect you to kind of identify yourself and let us run some information on you so we know who we're going to let through that background check.
That's
maybe
still...
the semantics of the thing, background check,
but
is where it's getting a little bit muddy, because it's definitely not a full-blown.
But actually, I know better, because see, it was at the end of February that I went up there to y'all's office for the first time, and I actually met with an agent. So this is where I first found out about the whole background check thing, and I was having a fit about it. But I needed to talk to an agent. Like, it was like one of those that I sacrificed, you know, that I was the one to give right there, because it was more important for me to at least speak with an agent, sit down and talk about what happened with an agent. And so I did, and he did. In his hand, he had a stack of paper, and it was all on me. And it was, you know, the background checks that I get for employment, you know, things are probably a tenth of the size or smaller of what he had. So I know, like, that would be, a background check would be about something, you know, like an employer. Like, it's not going to be that long, but I mean, what the guy had in his hand actually was a pretty big stack of paper. And honestly, it made me think that, okay, I guess I need to FOIA and see what's on file, because that's it shouldn't be all that. I mean, I've never been a threat to anybody. This has been gaslighted lies.
But coming from us as individual stance who's coming to meet you for the first time, and they don't know that, and given that we're in law enforcement, right? It's not just we're a private company or a restaurant or something where you're going to walk in and order food. Right? There's a level of difference there in which we need to have a level of understanding of who we're speaking to, who we're allowing onto the ground,
right?
Our security. So there's a little difference in there. But
like the difference, somebody, if it was
something you wanted to do, phone call options like we're doing today is an option, right? So we can hear your information to the tip line online, which again, I know you said you filed that once before. I would suggest getting on there and filling out, the information once more. It'll coincide with the report that I'm putting online. You'll be able to put in a lot more details than, just what we reviewed today. Mm-hmm. Just kind of doing anything that you need to do to kind of progress your situation.
Well, but if it was a private business, that's the thing. They would have the right to basically, the fact that y'all are, y'all work for the pub. I mean, y'all are public employees. Okay, that actually, it should be the opposite right there, because, I mean, if y'all, I mean, so y'all can come to us and ask for ID, or when you make contact, you want ID. That's how law enforcement is in general. But, you know, I think the Fourth Amendment's just very clear about the unreasonable search and seizure. There's got to be probable cause. There's got to be reasonable articulable suspicion that a crime was committed or is going to be committed. And that wasn't there. It just wasn't there.
Well, Matthew, we've gone through a lot today. I've given you some advice, some things you can also do on the online portion. Like I said, I'm going to document this. So if there's nothing else, I'm going to let you go for the evening. But like I said,
how do I get a copy of that report?
Getting a copy of the report's not going to be an option. Our systems are sealed. So
it's not an option. I bet it is.
To my understanding, the information filed in reports is something that you're not going to be able to request. But by all means.
Well, no, I mean the fact is I'm in federal court right now, so it might be for a regular FOIA request, but I guarantee that I can get around it with discovery.
And there might be in that regard, right? Like, don't take my word for it in that specific, no man can know everything, right? But I'm just telling you, in my experience, we don't provide information from these reports given unless it's in a discovery manner. But if you want to, follow up with that and try to see if there is a way, you absolutely can. Obviously, it'll take me some time to put the report in. It's not just going to be a 5-minute thing, but
so nobody can ever request like what's written on them on the reports. I mean, what if things were getting written in reports that were not the case, or what if we see what happened with Lafayette County.
I don't want to go down a rabbit hole there and play the what if game.
Because it's a valid question, though, man.
No, I totally understand, but that's the thing is I'm going to tell you right now with our situation, right? I have been diligent listening to you, going through everything, been very curious, and you've been very polite in sharing all of your information. So I want to thank you for that. But I don't have an answer to that question, and so I don't want to continue talking about that in that regard, because I'm not going to be able to give you any further answer than what I've already given you. But I can tell you that everything that you've told me is kind of what I've detailed, right? And I've given some summary of notes, and I'm going to type it up and do a report for you as an advocate, right, for you to go over what you were wanting to the complaint you're wanting to file. And so that's what I'm going to do.
I hope so, man, because man, I would really feel a lot better and actually know that you actually looked at things from a fair perspective like that if you could just take a hypothetical situation that I gave you earlier and tell me that it's wrong. But if you can't tell me that it's wrong, then, I mean, I've got serious trust issues here.
And like I said, everyone has their own experiences through life, and so I'm not going to just say you should trust me and go from there, right? It's not what I'm, but also kind of what I was going from you is I don't work in hypotheticals. We work in facts and circumstances. There's the facts of the situation. And so
if you take the facts,
you give me a hypothetical, right?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna give my opinion on a hypothetical scenario that you want to outline for me, unfortunately.
I'm just saying, if somebody was just standing on your lot, like, is that private property or not? Like, if they're not inside of the gate, like, that's not even
the person. Like, you asked me that at the very beginning, and I truly don't know. It's something that I'm going to ask.
Well,
to find out.
The answer's no, because y'all are paid by taxpayer dollars. So first of all, the FBI can't privately own anything, anyways, because it's it's a taxpayer funded, department. So, they can't say, first of all, the words, we own this, actually should not ever be coming out of an agent's mouth when it comes to property, because that's not the case. They can't, because it's paid for with taxpayer dollars. There's no way that y'all as an entity could own. They don't. And so that's where it gets into, you know, a publicly accessible area. You know, the rules governing conduct on federal property. You know, that thing that's posted on the outside of the security shack has got several things in there that would go to show that I was well within my rights right there, because it's on that policy. You know, it's on the it's posted on all federal properties, as if the First Amendment should have already been crystal clear. But then you got the, you know, you got the conduct on federal property that's publicly posted. And, you know, being a member of the press, you know, for newsworthy purposes, I was reading a declaration, and then whenever I reiterated that I was a member of the press, he wanted to ask me about a press pass. Where's your press pass at? You don't have to have a press pass. You know, most press passes are printed up. Like, press passes aren't, press passes aren't anything. The Supreme Court identifies a member of the press as anybody that gathers news content and disseminates the content out to the public. That's what identifies them as press in the eyes of the Supreme Court. So I think there should be, you know, obviously I can't make y'all's calls inside of there, but I sure think that there needs to be a, you know, there needs to be some training held on certain things, because that's bad. That's not even, there's not even a, you can't, there's not even a possibly, that's bad. I mean, and it should be easy to come out and say, yeah, that's not right. I don't support that. You know, that's in violation of rights.
Like I said, Matthew, I heard your side of the story, and, you know, I have no reason to not believe you, but I don't have all the facts and circumstances, and I don't play hypothetical. So again, I don't want to make a statement on that. You've asked me a few questions that I've answered in terms of, like, you know, that I don't have the answer.
Yeah, I've never lied to the FBI. I mean, look at what happened to Michael Flynn. You know, like, I'm not. In fact, you know, that's the interesting thing that I've said for the last few years. If you honestly think that I committed the state's bullshit sham charge back in May of 2017, where I couldn't possibly have committed it, okay? For me to have truly been guilty of the state's sham fictitious charge would have made it that I was guilty of lying to the FBI. So I was demanding to get indicted for lying to the FBI, because, you know, the truth deserves its day in court. And if they actually did indict me for lying to the FBI on telling the truth, you know, the federal government claims that they have a 99% win rate. Well, it's not going to be in that column that day, I can assure you that. I'll be in that 1% that you know, because I have nothing to lie about when it comes to that. But yet nobody's taken me serious, and nobody's tried to charge me with lying to the FBI. So I mean, like, where is, you know, it's I don't see, the complicity is just out of this world. All right, I'll let you go, man. We're right at 2 hours,
thank you for
so.
calling today. Yep, I'll get that all documented for you.
All right.
Have a great rest of your weekend, Matthew. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Reardon. I'm a journalist, a father of four, and a relentless advocate for our constitutional rights. I stand here today at the federal courthouse in Salt Lake City, not just on my own behalf, but on behalf of every American who has ever placed faith in the integrity of our legal system, only to have that faith betrayed. On January 21st of this year, an illegal prison sentence was finally vacated. A sentence that had stolen precious time from my life and my children. Within a week, I relocated from Mississippi to Layton, Utah, looking to rebuild. But almost immediately, illegal surveillance was conducted by Oxford Police Department. And on that very same day, my private address, which had never been made public, was doxed out and disseminated to 139 police officers, along with false and defamatory information. I filed a federal lawsuit on March 31st of this year to challenge this and other constitutional violations. That very day, I went to the FBI here in Salt Lake City to submit a sworn declaration, a formal statement under penalty of perjury. Instead of taking it, I was told a background check was required before I could even speak with an agent. I was reporting the situation standing outside in the visitor parking lot when I was threatened with arrest for trespassing, and my license plate was documented. Since then, I filed 2 separate motions to lift the stay on my case, a motion for recusal, because every day that this stay remains in place, the harm I suffer intensifies. But the court has not acted. The stay remains. The silence continues. And it's not just the court. The Office of the Inspector General has refused to acknowledge either of the 2 formal complaints I submitted, each one backed by evidence and urgency. Not even a case number. The FBI has ignored both of my FOIA requests, filed nearly a month ago. No acknowledgement, no tracking number, nothing. It's like I'm being swatted away by the Department of Justice, treated like an inconvenience, like a problem to be buried. And now, even the federal courthouse behind me, once hailed as the guardian of rights, seems to be joining in. What happened to the separation of powers? What happened to checks and balances? On May 2nd, I was threatened with criminal charges in Morgan County, Utah, for using my alias name, Don Matthews, on public record request submitted under Utah's grandma law. Why? Because my real name had already been doxed. Because 2 reckless municipalities, Layton and Oxford, abused their power and weaponized my identity. So what would any journalist do? I protected myself. And for that, they're threatening me with prosecution. How many more hits am I expected to take? How many more shocking acts of complicity and retaliation must be endured before someone says enough? And what happens if or when the federal court behind me continues to do nothing? At what point does justice delayed become justice denied? Because right now, from where I stand, this courthouse, this symbol of liberty, is beginning to look less like a temple of justice and more like a kangaroo court. I'm calling on the press. I'm calling on the public. I'm calling on every honest official and citizen who still believes in the rule of law. Look at what's happening here. Don't turn away. Demand answers. Demand accountability. Because if this can happen to me, a journalist, a Marine Corps veteran, it could happen to anyone. Thank you for being here. I will not be silenced. I will not back down. And I will not stop fighting. until justice is not just a slogan, but a reality. For myself and for every American who still believes in the promise of our Constitution. This is Matthew Reardon, reporting live from the federal courthouse in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. We the People News.
Caught red-handed, their lies laid bare. These public officials thought nobody would care. A conspiracy deep, but the truth's coming through. The system's cracking, now they'll pay their due. Lies and corruption, they thought they'd control, but justice is burning, exposing their soul. They built this on deceit, but their cover is blown. Now the guilty must answer for the seeds they've sown. Down in Galveston, it started that night. Osteen and Doretti turned wrong into right. Said I was drunk, claimed the smell in the air, but no alcohol touched me, their proof wasn't there. They locked me up 11 months in a cell. Fabricated charges, a personal hell. They twisted the law, made me a pawn, but their conspiracies unravel and it won't last long. A growing plot, their power abused, but I'm breaking the chains, their lies are diffused. The truth's on my side and it's ready to speak, exposing their game, bringing justice to the weak. Caught red-handed, their lies laid bare. These public officials thought nobody would care. A conspiracy deep, but the truth's coming through. The system's cracking, now they'll pay their due. Lies and corruption, they thought they control, but justice is burning, exposing their soul. They built this on deceit, but the cover is blown. Now the guilty must answer for the seeds they've sown. Extradited from Galveston back to Lafayette. 2 weeks before trial, the lies were set. Then Ben Creekmore played his false hand, fictitious evidence in his corrupt plan. Judge Tolleson fell for the charade they showed. 2 years in prison, down a dark road. Osteen hit the stand, swore oath after oath, but his lies cracked under the weight of my growth. July 18th, they thought they'd won, but justice don't sleep, the truth has begun. Their house of cards is shaking, ready to fall. I'm standing tall, calling out them all. Caught red-handed, their lies laid bare. These public officials thought nobody would care. A conspiracy deep, but the truth's coming through. The system's cracking, now they'll pay their due. Lies and corruption, they thought they control. Sentence vacated, exposing their soul. They built it on deceit, but the cover is blown. Now the guilty must answer for the seeds they've sown. Candy Beavers, Hobie James played the dirty part. Conspired with Galveston to tear me apart. Jeff Busby sent false statements to the district attorney, and when the heat came down, it was so concerning. A snake in the grass hiding behind his crew, but the truth reveals everything they do. Their lies run deep, but justice runs deeper. Each betrayal exposed, the climb's getting steeper. They thought they'd silence me, bury my voice, but now it's my time and I've made my choice to shine a light, make sure these criminals pay. Justice is coming and it's here to stay. I lost it all, but I've still got the fight. Damn right, the truth's a weapon cutting through the night. The sentence declared unlawful, the order vacated. I'm vindicated, liberated, and of course I'm elated. Caught red-handed, their lies laid bare. These public officials thought nobody would care. A conspiracy deep, but the truth's coming through. The system's cracking, now they'll pay their due. Lies and corruption, they thought they control. Sentence vacated, exposing their soul. They built it on deceit, but the cover is blown. Now the guilty must answer for the seeds they've sown. Originating. Damn right, the truth's a weapon, cutting through the night. The sentence declared unlawful, the order vacated. I'm vindicated.
Mark Carrington.
Good night, everybody. That's it for it. Stay tuned to We the People News Probably not going to do too much extra posting to Lafayette County Audit, unless it's actually directly about Lafayette County. We've turned a new chapter. It's now We the People News. But something tells me that Lafayette County is not done yet, so long as the authorities, ones that have the ability to do something about it, are standing down. So the channel will be there, and it will be posted to whenever anything is involving Lafayette County. Good night. God bless.